I have no idea why I'm so aggressive. Because it's typically a male trait, but my dad always wanted a boy, and I was the boy he never had, all 5'2" and 95 pounds of me. I just love to, you tell me I can't do something? Really? Okay, let's see. I'm Donna Salyers from Covington, Kentucky, and I'm the founder of Donna Salyers Fabulous-Furs. I was born in Covington, Kentucky, and in retrospect, I'm happy I was born into a poor family, because in many ways, it prepares you for everything you need to do to be a good entrepreneur, to be innovative, to be resourceful, not to expect somebody to hand you something, but to go out and get it done, whatever it is. So I grew up in Covington, and I had wonderful parents who always worked. Both of them worked a lot. Neither of them finished high school. You know, they had difficult childhoods. I did not. So I had to get a job when I was 13. I didn't have to, but if I wanted to have any money, I got a job. And I'm so glad I did. I was selling women's clothing. And of course, to people 3 times my age. And I think it really is important for a person to be able to look someone in the eye and, what can I help you find today? I know I've got some, you're gonna love this. And not just be a clerk, but a salesperson, and do it with enthusiasm, to the point that my mother got a phone call. The store manager asked my mother, could you tell Donna to kind of lay back a little bit so she doesn't make the other ladies look bad? I did not go to college, but I was always straight A's. And actually, in hindsight, I'm glad I did, because by not going to school, you're forced to learn on your own. And I think every job, and I've had dozens of jobs, I have learned something that prepared me for doing Fabulous-Furs. And Fabulous-Furs has been my pinnacle. You know, I started Fabulous-Furs, and now we've been around for 35 years. And everything I did in life prepared me for that. Like, I wrote a syndicated newspaper column. I had never written anything more than a letter to the editor to say how horrible their column was on sewing and fashion, who said, send us 6 samples. We agree it's awful. And I said, wow, this is good. And at that time, I had 2 kids in diapers, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I thought, I have died and gone to heaven. I've got a job I can do after the kids go to bed. I can become syndicated. And that gave me entree, because having a newspaper column, I must be an expert on something. Oh, now I get to do TV. I'm doing TV spots in the local news at noon, because at that time, the local channels programmed to women who were at home fixing lunch. And I could tell you how to make Halloween costumes. And today we're going to make napkins and placemats for Thanksgiving. And I could just be as creative and inventive as my little mind would take me. And that meant I had to go to New York to meet with people in New York, because that's where all of fashion happens. That's where the sewing companies were. And that led to a national TV show. A national TV show? Me? I had died and gone to heaven, and I was actually getting paid to be there. While I'm going to New York for that TV show, I realized that every woman in New York, it felt, was wearing a full-length mink coat, except for me. I had been writing my newspaper column for quite a few years, And I had resources, and I knew that there was a mill somewhere in Tennessee. I'll call them. I bet they've got some really nice faux fur. And so I made a coat, a faux fur coat, full length, just like what I had seen in New York. And I wore it to New York, and people stopped me on the street, and they said, "That's a fabulous coat." Restaurants would not check my coat. They couldn't take responsibility for a coat of this value. And I'm sort of laughing quietly, thinking, if they only knew I just sat on pins in the taxi. So I wore that coat to death, and everyone wanted to try it on. And I started teaching classes. And after 5 years, I hated the coat because I thought, this is a germ factory. 5,000 people have tried it on, and I don't think I even want to touch it. And I've also made some money by now. I had $5,000 in cash, and I would drive from our home in White Oak in Cincinnati and go down to the Cincinnati Enquirer, where I turn in my columns. I drop them off, and good, somebody's having a fur sale, and today I'll drop off my columns, and then I'm treating myself to a full-length mink coat. And Jim will be so excited when he sees this thing because he didn't know. And so that was my plan. And as I'm driving to the fur salon, Paul Harvey was a radio personality. He was the radio broadcaster talking about kittens being skinned alive and passed off as mink teddy bears. And I think, I guess I could be about to buy a kitty coat. And I would never forgive myself if that were the case. And then, I hit myself on the head. Are minks so different than kittens that they don't suffer when they're skinned alive and turned into coats? And I had a change of heart at that moment. I had never thought of animal fur in that context. And I've never been the kind of person who beats people on the head for wearing a fur coat. I say, follow your own conscience. I'm not the fashion police, but I cannot wear fur. I've got $5,000. I will start a sewing kit business. I can sell you the ingredients that you need to make a full-length mink coat, just like I did. That's my idea. That's what I'll do. And I sold more coat kits than I could put together, and I filled our garage, our 2-car garage, with faux fur, and now I've got to pack all these kits, and I got my sister to help me, and I could not believe it. And in our first year of business, running out of our garage and basement right next to the family room in White Oak, I did $300,000 in business in revenue. And in today's dollars, that's about $1 million. $1 million out of your basement in your first year. So I was pretty excited. My husband was excited. His friends were excited. People now want to invest in Fabulous Furs? Really? They want to do what? You want me to do an infomercial? Like down in Florida, and they'll broadcast it all over the country? This is unbelievable. And I was off to the races, and that's how Fabulous Furs started. And some of those things were huge. Most of them weren't. Most of them weren't. And I'm thinking of this infomercial. It was my responsibility to get us everything we needed to sell, I don't know, say 5,000 units in a few months. They're paying for the infomercial. They're contracted to put it out there in like 20 major markets, in like 100 airings in the first 30 days. Really? We had 3 airings, and they were in little towns that didn't sound like major metropolitan areas to me. In infomercials, they were the cutting edge at the time. Gosh, if you were in Cleveland, if you were in Columbus, Ohio, if you were in New York, you could expect some major business. Well, it was a disaster. And after the first month, I said, where are all these major markets that you're supposed to? Well, this happened and that happened, and they had every excuse you can imagine. Finally, they did not perform. I had performed, of course, because I had this huge amount of inventory that I'm sitting on and borrowed money for. And we had, in our contract, we had an agreement that it would go to mediation. We went to mediation. And of course, it went in my favor. The next thing they would do, of course, is to file for bankruptcy. And when they filed for bankruptcy, their assets included a stapler. I was livid. It was comical, except it made me so angry. I could have killed him, and I would have had he been in that room. So I did the next best thing. I called him and said, you better watch your back. If I had a sharp pair of scissors and you were here, I would kill you because you are taking my company under. I'm not sure how afraid he was, but of course that gives you the resolve to say, now what? I've got to do some major selling. And of course I did. I think I have about 100 of the darkest hours where I called Jim and said, Jim, I can't even make payroll. You got to help me. Can you help me? Can you come up with $50,000? Which sounds like, crazy talk. And he would always somehow find it. If a person doesn't have a support like that, it would be very hard. And maybe it's not your husband. Maybe it's your a friend, your banker, or your parent, or your son, or your daughter. But Jim bailed me out. Jim would always, okay, we cannot cry in interviews like this. No, stop. But it's good to be married to an entrepreneur because he understood those times, because he's lived through all of those himself and then some. I feel so fortunate to have a good business person who's a really good advisor. When I started Fabulous-Furs, I was still writing my newspaper column. And there were times when I was so busy, I thought, oh, not another deadline. What am I going to write about this week? Quick, anything. I thought every newspaper and every magazine editor, TV person feels like I do. I need an idea. I'll put anything on, even Fabulous-Furs, right? And so I got into a pattern. I would devote every Saturday afternoon to sending out letters to magazine editors. And there was no internet when I started in 1989, but there was the theatrical source book. And I put an ad in there, and it probably cost $100 or something. And that opened the gates to heaven. One of our first was Designing Women, and that was a really popular TV show in the early 90s. When Designing Women likes us, even says they're fabulous, it gave me confidence. It gave us all confidence. The people who were working in our office, and we were all taking calls as quickly as we could. And Paul Harvey was the reason that I started Fabulous-Furs. He was the radio broadcaster talking about kittens being skinned alive and passed off as mink teddy bears. And I thought, he's no different than me. I bet he would love to know that something he said truly affected at least one person in this world. And here's what I did, Mr. Harvey. So I wrote him a letter, and I didn't expect anything in return. But one day I was making lunch for my kids. It was on a summer day, and phone rang, and it's when nobody had cell phones. Will Mrs. Salyers take a call from Mr. Harvey? Thinking, Paul Harvey is on the other line calling me? Yes, she will. Yes, Donna will speak to Mr. Harvey. And we talked, and he thanked me, and he never let on what was about to happen, but he just wanted to talk to the person who wrote that letter. And maybe 2 weeks later, he did a Donna Salyers Fabulous-Furs newspaper column. And I think we got I don't know, 10,000 phone calls. Because he had very broad coverage. Like, I heard from people in Tokyo who wanted to warehouse my kits so that they could sell them in Japan. I mean, it was otherworldly. And it was mind-boggling for an entrepreneur with no business experience, none. And those things give you confidence, though. They may not bring you $10 million, but they will give you confidence. And I think that's so important for an entrepreneur to hold on to, no matter what happens, we can still be optimistic. We can be optimistic about, hey, our building didn't fall down today, or there's something we can be happy about. There's something to be grateful for. So all those things led me to adapt an attitude of gratitude that there's always, things are never so bad that they can't get worse, right? But there's always something to be thankful for. And another thing all this gave me, all these amazing breaks that I had, like Oprah wanted to wear our coat on the cover of her magazine, the largest magazine, and this was like in 2014. It's been a while. And all those things happened, and they just came out of nowhere, except every person you meet could be that person who opens a door. Divine intervention has to be in there. And for that reason, we help a lot of nonprofits. Early on, I said, look, I've had 5,000 more breaks than I should ever have expected. And so we help everybody who comes along. When it's all said and done, we're all just here together trying to create jobs, pay taxes, improve neighborhoods. It's small business. 60% of our country's economy depends on small businesses, and I love to support small businesses. And I think that's come back because we've had such great community support, and we've certainly been blessed with that in Covington.